A president fled his country yesterday. But that's not the story. The story is how a generation that wasn't even alive during the last coup just executed one of the most strategic power plays in modern African politics. No major violence, no traditional opposition party, just infrastructure failure, social coordination, and a military unit that remembered where real power comes from. This is the Madagascar breakdown. And if you're building anything in Africa right now, you need to understand what just happened here. Let's build. September 25th, 2025. Madagascar's Gen Z didn't wake up demanding regime change. They woke up, again, without power, without water. Here's what most coverage won't tell you. Madagascar has a population of 30 million people. 3/4 live in poverty. Only 1/3 has access to electricity. And even those who have it, blackouts routinely exceed 8 hours a day. That's not a temporary crisis. That's a failed state wearing a government costume. Now here's where it gets interesting. President Andry Rajoelina has been in power since 2018. He first came to power in 2009 through a coup. He knows how this game works. So when the protests started over water and electricity, his first move was classic. Fire someone. He sacked the energy minister. Then, when that didn't work, he dissolved the entire government. But Gen Z didn't stop, because they understood something crucial. This wasn't about one minister. This wasn't even about one president. This was about a system that's been extracting from Madagascar since independence in 1960. Think about that. 65 years of independence, and the average person is poorer than when the French left. GDP per capita has dropped 45% since 1960. That's not governance. Madagascar is not a poor country. It produces 90% of the world's vanilla and a major player in gems. Gold, nickel, cobalt, copper, topaz, platinum, ruby, sapphire, and many of the rare earth minerals required in smartphones and vehicles. And Gen Z? They'd seen this playbook before, in Kenya, in Nepal. They knew what to do. Here's what separated this from just another protest. Coordination. If you look at the protesters in Madagascar, Kenya, Indonesia, Peru, you'll notice something. They're wearing the same symbol. A skull with a straw hat from the anime One Piece. Why does this matter? Because it shows horizontal organization across borders. No single leader to arrest. No central headquarters to shut down. Just a generation that grew up on the same internet, watching the same content, learning the same strategies. They call themselves Gen Z Madagascar. Not a political party, not an NGO, a generation. Now here's the genius move, and this is where builders need to pay attention. They didn't try to fight the military. They didn't call for violence. They just kept showing up, day after day, making their presence impossible to ignore. And then they waited for the system to crack. October 12th, Saturday. The crack appears. CAPSAT, an elite military unit, publicly sides with the protesters. Not just sides with them, they march with them. They announce, "We will refuse orders to shoot." The irony is legendary. The military unit that made Rajoelina president in the first coup is now the unit that ends his presidency. But it gets better.
CAPSAT's commander, Colonel Michael Randrianarina, holds a press conference. He says, "We responded to the people's call. It's up to the Malagasy people to decide what happens next."
Notice what he didn't say? We're in charge now. This isn't a military junta playbook. This is something different. By Sunday, CAPSAT has appointed a new head of the armed forces. The defense minister, Rajoelina's own defense minister, accepts the appointment. The president's own government is agreeing to its own removal. That's not a coup. That's a coordinated transfer of legitimacy. And Rajoelina, he's watching his entire power structure dissolve in real time. Sunday evening, October 13th. A helicopter lands at Madagascar's Sainte-Marie airport. 5 minutes later, a French military aircraft takes off. President Rajoelina is gone. The route? French military plane to Reunion Island, still French territory. Then a private jet to Dubai. where he arrived Monday morning. France says they can't confirm helping him flee. But a French military aircraft, French territory stopover, and the president of their former colony safely out. Come on. Here's the geopolitical read. France doesn't want another failed state in its sphere of influence. They don't want a military junta. They don't want chaos that could affect their interests. Madagascar produces most of the world's vanilla, plus nickel, cobalt, textiles. So France extracts their guy before things get messy.
Monday evening, Rajoelina posts a Facebook Live from an undisclosed location. He says he had to flee because of threats to his life. He calls for dialogue. He says the Constitution must be respected.
But here's what he's really saying. I'm still president, I just can't be in the country. That's not how power works. You can't govern a country you're afraid to be in. The moment you flee, you've already lost. The question isn't if you're done, it's who fills the vacuum you left behind. And that's where this story gets really interesting. Okay, let's break down what just happened from a builder's perspective. Lesson 1. Infrastructure is politics. The protests didn't start over ideology. They started because the lights wouldn't turn on and the water wouldn't flow. If you're building in Africa, whether it's a business, a movement, or a government, your legitimacy is tied to delivery. You can't govern, you can't lead, you can't build trust if you can't deliver basic services. Madagascar's government couldn't keep the lights on in 2025. That's not a political failure, it's an infrastructure failure that became a political crisis. Lesson 2. Gen Z moves different. Traditional opposition parties in Madagascar boycotted the 2023 election. They tried the old playbook, refused to participate, call it illegitimate, wait for change. Gen Z didn't wait. They organized horizontally, coordinated across borders, and moved when the system was vulnerable. No central leadership to arrest, no party headquarters to raid. That's a new political technology, and it's spreading. Lesson 3. Legitimacy is fluid. The moment the military believed the people had more legitimacy than the president, it was over. Not when the protests started, not when people died, when the military switched sides. Power doesn't come from position, it comes from who believes you have it. Rajoelina had the title of president, the palace, the security forces. But when he lost the belief from the military, from the people, from the system, none of that mattered. Lesson 4. Extraction has an expiration date. Since 1960, Madagascar's GDP per capita has dropped 45%. That's not development. That's not even stagnation. That's organized decline. And eventually, the people being extracted from realize there's nothing left to extract. The system has to change or collapse. We're seeing this across Africa. The patience for governments that don't deliver is running out. And Gen Z isn't waiting 20 years for the next election. What's next for Madagascar? 3 possible scenarios. 1. Military transition. CAPSAT maintains order, organizes elections, tries to rebuild legitimacy. 2. Political chaos. Competing factions fight for control, economy suffers, instability spreads. 3. Gen Z governance. The movement that toppled the government actually tries to build something new. History says option 2 is most likely. But this generation has already done what history said they couldn't. For builders, the opportunity. When systems collapse, there's a window. A window to build different. To establish new models. To solve the problems that caused the collapse. Madagascar needs energy infrastructure builders. Water system engineers. Governance models that actually deliver. Economic systems that don't extract. Entrepreneurs who can build for Malagasy people, not just from them. That's not charity. That's opportunity. Every failed state is a state that failed to build what people needed. Build what they need and you become infrastructure. Infrastructure is power. This isn't about one country or one president. This is about a generation across Africa deciding that extraction is over, that governance without delivery is over, that waiting for permission is over. They're not asking for a seat at the table, they're building new tables. And if you're building in Africa, in business, in technology, in governance, in culture, you need to understand this shift. because the game just changed. Quick question. What do you think happens next in Madagascar? Military stability? Political chaos? Another Ibrahim Traore? Or something we haven't seen before? Drop your read below. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button. We're decoding Africa's power moves every week, the ones they don't teach in school, the ones that don't make mainstream headlines, the ones that actually matter for builders.